Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be doing my review of Stars Without Numbers. And so this is an OSR, an old school rules game. It is simplified from Dungeons and Dragons. It really has a very strong Dungeons and Dragons rules feel, but it is simplified and has a lot of elements that are really quite interesting. It was created by Kevin Crawford. And one of the viewers on my channel requested that I actually review this game. I'm very glad they did. It had been on my list for quite a while, and it just got to a point where I kind of prioritized it because it was requested, and it really is fantastic. It's a really wonderful game, and there's a free version. So this review is for the free version of the Stars Without Number Revised Edition. Okay. And it's hundreds of pages long, really incredible. And as a free product, it's a 5 out of 5 star product. It really is fantastic, and there's no reason in the world not to download it and try it. So what it is Stars Without Number is really a sandbox. It's a few different things. It's a sandbox and it's a toolkit for running science fiction stories. And I would say not really space opera, although Kevin Crawford, who is the author for this particular product, it really wanted to make it as general, really wanted to be to make it so that a game master would be able to run almost anything they wanted to run with it. Okay, now I think what's difficult though is I think it's difficult to make a game that you can that you can do hard science fiction with, as well as space opera, and I think this leads more toward hard science fiction. And there are a few problems because whenever you try to deliver everything to anybody, I think that gets problematic. I like games that are a little more closed and say, hey, this is what you're going to run, right? And then what I would like to see is rather than, close that option within one book and then create additional books for the other options you want to do. It's just a little bit of a different approach. But overall, Kevin Crawford did an amazing job with this particular tabletop role-playing game. So let's talk about it. So your player character is defined by a background and a class and a focus, okay? And it gives you a lot of variety. Also, you can see the word background there is coming in, and so one of the things is more and more of these games are really not dealing with race directly, and they're you're seeing terms like ancestry or heritage or background, and then they'll deal with whatever race the player character is or the species they are within that. And that's really just came up recently and is really starting to get a lot of traction within tabletop role-playing. It's very interesting that that's starting to happen. One thing, there were a few things I didn't like about this. I'll talk about them just real briefly. It had some adult themes. So it had, not anything that's like pure NSFW, but there was some discussion about particular backgrounds that you could take that I was like, oh, that's kind of odd to see that there. So I didn't really feel it helped the game. And I'm always amazed when people put in more content that leans more toward adult. Like, the oldest profession in the world. Let's put it that way, right? That's in here. It's talked about as kind of like a background, or some of the NPCs are referred to, or have that particular career. And you're like, that's really odd. Why is that in here, right? And and I'm always curious why authors choose to do that, because I think it limits your audience. Whereas, if it's more all ages friendly, and when I mean all ages friendly, I mean 12 and up. That's generally, that's what Dungeons and Dragons does. I think that's the route that all games should go, so that teens can play the games as well. Because I think that's a lot of times when people start to get interested and when they have the capacity to read a few hundred pages of rules. So it's really kind of interesting. A few other things I didn't like. The game involves psionics, and I'm not a huge fan of psionics. Never have been, and the reason why is I just don't feel that we're heading that way. I really don't think humans will ever have psionics, so it just always rings a little false to me. There's just no reason, we can't get to the moon a second time. It's just kind of hard to think that our brains are going to, evolve to have psionics. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I thought that was a little bit of a, kind of brought it out, it took it out a bit. So the other thing is, so just a few things. So I think this game leans more toward hard science fiction than it does space opera. and it was hard to mix those two, but it was really interesting. So let me talk about some of the things the game has that I really liked. Hacking was really, really interesting. All the hacking rules existed on one page, which is fantastic. I really liked how concise that was. XP rewards had multiple custom ways to reward XP. Fantastic idea. Really worked in this. The Starship section was exceptional. This is probably the best part of this entire game. The Starship section I've never seen it done as well in any tabletop role-playing game. So, the Starship actions, it had a list of Starship actions you could do. Bridge and gunnery and engineering and comms and also just general other tasks, right? And so this really gave everybody within your player character group, literally there's 5 things to do, and your player character group has 4 or 5 players. So everybody has a slot, and I thought that was great. The Starship design section was really strong as well. As far as starships, this game is wonderful, and it gives ideas for how you could do trade with these ships and how you could do combat with these ships, and it's really exceptional. This, if you want to run a science fiction tabletop role playing game, and you have a group that's used to D&D and would really prefer a simplified D&D rule system, you're not going to get you can't find a better one out there, and certainly not for free. And this is let me say also, Kevin Crawford delivering this game, right? This is another one of these tremendous games where you look at it and you're like, how is this free? It's incredible, right? You could run this for months. It's really incredible. Actually, low number of years, I would say, as well. Sector design. So there's a section in the game for sector design, designing a sector of space. It goes into polity. So how do you structure the politics? Trade routes, world types. What are the different types of worlds? This is a prison planet. Is it a planet where people go for vacation? Is it a mining planet? Is it a mix of those? Fantastic structures to allow you to build worlds and build entire sectors, entire galaxy sectors with this, with this system. Really, really excellent. There's a lot of GMing advice, which I thought was, I'm really starting, to think about the value of putting GMing advice in a tabletop role-playing game. I really feel like a lot of people are saying a lot of the same things, and so to take up space in the book for that when you're really going to learn it through videos and podcasts seems a little strange. I really think we should start to think about breaking that out. The experience options, I talked earlier about experience, and they went into a little more depth in the GMing section where they talked about personal goals, and so you can use your experience on personal goals, or you can spend your XP for temporary boost within the game, or you could use your XP specifically to get loot. Like, for instance, if I want to buy a suit of better armor, right? I can just do that with credits. But what if I want a ship, right? Or what if I want a new engine for my ship and a new shield system? You could actually spend experience to make that happen, and there's mechanics within it. Spending loot to get particular missions. I thought that was really, really neat. One of the things I should talk about is these. Kevin Crawford is really dedicated to these charts, right? And to being able to randomly build adventures, randomly build a player character, randomly build all kinds of different things. And so there's these charts in it. Now, I don't like to build anything random in my games. I like for my players to design things. I like for me to design things. But these charts are just as useful just to see what options you have. So, he wanted them to be used randomly. I think it's a bad idea personally. But the work he put into these lists is just as valuable for a world creators, because looking at these lists, it just generated so many ideas, right? And that's another sign of a great game, is when you walk away and you're like, I have 4 campaign ideas in my head, which is really nice. So there's a list of 100 adventure seeds in this book. There's a Xeno bestiary, that goes across different planets, right? It had an NPC type list. These were really, really wonderful. It talks about robots, and it talks about AIs. Really, really interesting. Also, it had a section on factions, which was really neat. So, like political factions, mercantile factions, mercenary factions, all these different, and it talked about how factions have assets and how factions can take turns. an entire system for dealing with factions, almost as though they were player characters or non-player characters. Brilliant, brilliant, beautiful part of the game, and it was exquisite. I really, really liked it a lot. The house rules. House rules within the game, I did not like this. I think house rules within your tabletop role-playing game is the Ouroboros. It is the snake eating its tail. More and more, I struggle with authors who do this in their book. They're like, let's talk about house rules. Dude, you can't talk about house rules. You are literally the authority on this game. And this, I see this as almost like a fundamental breakdown of leadership, right? Just people like going into a role of authority and pretending they're not an authority, or not owning the idea that they're the authority. You are literally the wall that everybody will push off of, and nobody wants to be. Everybody wants to be the cool guy now. They don't want to take the role of authority and have responsibility for things that are wrong. So for an author to be talking about house rules in the book, you don't need to equip people to break your rules like that. That's like saying I need to help somebody breathe. It's done naturally. You don't need to equip it. It's just really strange. I also thought the tone was a little more casual than I would have liked. There were name generators in here. Oh my gosh! So I'm returning the things I do like about the book. Thank you. Name generators. This should be in every single tabletop role-playing game. There are just pages and pages of awesome name generators broken out by nation, right, and by alien functioning, right? And it was just, it was gorgeous. Really, really liked it a lot. They had an entire section of one role NPCs, one role patrons, one role urban encounters, one role wilderness tables. These tables in the book are really worth the price of admission as well. So I did talk about a few things I didn't like about this book, and that's not really doesn't have anything to do with Kevin Crawford. I think if you're going to do an extensive tabletop role-playing game, you're going to hit some things that not everybody's going to like. And so there was some of that in here. But I just was blown away with the quality of the work in this book. And as a free product, it's, download it today. It's truly incredible. It's really beautiful. One other thing I just wanted to throw in that I didn't like a lot that I wanted to talk about because it deals with Star Trek is you could see him straining, Kevin Crawford straining with, like, what do they want to run Star Wars, and what if they want to run Star Trek? So teleportation is in this game, right? But there's so much, but the world of Stars Without Number is super generic by design, almost like Traveler, right? So that you could run a Traveler game with this, and I would run this over Traveler. The rule set is much, much more elegant than Traveler. The game overall is a much better game than Traveler, which is a little sad because Traveler's been around for a long time and has gone through multiple iterations. But Traveler has its own community. I'm still kind of deciding where I land on Traveler overall, but I think Stars Without Number Revised Edition, and certainly being available for free, automatically makes it way better than anything available on the Traveler side. But you see this tension in the game between, do they want to run a Star Wars game? Do they want to run a Star Trek game? And teleportation is actually listed in the general setting, right? And that's really problematic because I've been watching Orville, and I think Orville pulled teleportation out of Star Trek, and actually Star Trek is better without teleportation. I think that and this game would have been better without teleportation. That was me just catching one more thing that really I wasn't super happy with in the game, but overall I absolutely love this game. I absolutely recommend the free download, and then if you really dig it, consider purchasing the PDF. Or the purchase version of the PDF. That's tough though. I think it's interesting. A lot of these creators are making almost like a freemium model. So this free version of the game has less art. I'm not sure I would actually pay $10 or $20 extra just for art. If you wanted to support Kevin Crawford, that makes a lot of sense. I get that. There's one of the games that I did that with was Blades in the Dark for John Harper. I bought the PDF even though there were a lot of clues that the SRD would come out later, and I've been very, very happy with that. So you if you're like a really big OSR person or something like that, you definitely may consider a purchase. Last thing I'm going to say, absolutely download this, and I think it's totally worth playing if you like, especially if you want to play anything that leans toward a hard sci-fi game. and if you have fans who, if you have players who are really, really in the Dungeons and Dragons niche. So that is my whole sweep, and I just wanted to talk about this awesome game, Stars Without Number, revised edition. Really fantastic, and thanks to my particular viewer who actually requested this video. And thank you, and have a wonderful day. Take care, everybody.